coloring in the temperatures of different places around the world, you've created a map of the world's climates. And by knowing about these 4 climates, you can understand why the places on Earth look and feel the way they do.
All right, so this is what our map looks like. So remember, we have the blue tells us that it is a cold climate. So it's cold there all year round. Purple tells us that it's cold in the winter, but hot in the summer. Orange tells us that it's warm in the winter and hot in the summer. Red tells us that it's hot all year long. So this is what our map looks like.
Maybe you notice that the climates form a pattern, like this, stretching across the whole globe. This middle section right here, you might have called it the hot zone. You might already have known that the hottest places in the world are near the equator. That's the line on a globe that goes around the very middle of the Earth. But if you look on a globe, you can actually see 2 other lines on either side of the equator.
So yeah, the closest you are to the equator, that's more likely to be hot.
These are called the tropic lines. So scientists prefer to use the word tropical to describe what it feels like in this whole area, the area between these lines. This is the tropical climate zone. These are the places where it's hot all year long. If you live here or visit here, you never need a winter coat, even if it's the middle of the winter months. The reason it's so hot in the tropical zone has to do with how the sun shines on that middle section of the Earth. Let me explain. Imagine the Earth in outer space, like this. Now, this part of the Earth here, the middle part, is the only place on Earth where the sun's beams shine straight at the ground without any slant. This heats up the ground in the middle of the Earth more than other places, making the middle zone on Earth have the hottest climate. That's why the middle of your map, the tropical zone, is hot all year long. Since the tropical zone is so hot, this also causes lots of water to evaporate or rise up off the tropical lakes and oceans, which makes the air in the tropical climate zone feel very wet and humid. By afternoon, some of that hot, wet air has gotten high enough up into the sky that it gets cooled off, and so starts to fall back down to the ground again as rain. So when you visit somewhere in the tropical climate zone, you can expect not only hot weather, but also rain almost every day.
So would you guess that the rainforest is a hot place? Yeah, absolutely.
You'll also see tons of lush green plants growing everywhere all year long, since they're so well watered. Lots of rain, hot weather, tons of plants. Does this sound familiar? The tropical climate zone is home to the world's rainforests. So that just about covers the tropical climate zone. But now let's look at these parts of the world, the parts you colored blue on opposite ends of the Earth. Why are the opposite ends of the Earth the same climate? Well, let's think about the Earth in space again. Remember how I said that the middle of the Earth is really hot because the sunbeams hit it straight on? Well, at the top and bottom of the Earth, the sunbeams are always shining at a slant. They never shine straight at the ground. So the ground at these areas never gets warmed up very much.
Because it doesn't get as much sun than the other areas.
These areas are always cold, just like you drew on your map. So these zones are both extremely cold, or since this is where the North and South Pole are, scientists call these the polar climate zones. The polar climates mostly look white and snowy. They're home to the coldest places on Earth. For example, summertime in Antarctica rarely gets above 9 degrees. That's summer. Now, there are some differences between the North Pole and South Pole. For example, they have different animals, like polar bears only live in the North Pole area, or the Arctic, and penguins only live in the South Pole, or Antarctic.
It's where Gigi lives.
But notice that even polar bears and penguins have something in common. They're both chubby and fluffy. Do you see that?
Oh,
They have to be,
so cute.
because of the cold polar climate that they live in. Any animals living in a polar climate have to have lots of fat in order to keep warm. That's why they look so chubby. So now we've covered the cold polar climate zone and the hot tropical climate zone. But what about these in-between ones? What kind of weather, what kind of plants, what kind of animals do you think that these areas have?
So let's think about that. So our orange and purple zones are the zones that aren't considered tropical or polar. So let's think. I wonder what it's like if you live there. I wonder what it would be like. Like what kind of plants, what kind of weather, what kind of animals. If you feel like I'm moving too fast, you can pause and give yourself more time to think. I'm going to move on in 3, 2, 1, 0.
So, what about the in between climates? What's it look like here? What does the weather feel like? Well, here's something kind of weird, actually. Many people don't know the name of this really big in between climate. And yet, this is where most of the world's people live. This climate zone is called the temperate climate, and it includes huge parts of North America, Europe, and Asia. The temperate climate is the place that has warm summers but cold winters. In other words, if you live in the temperate climate zone, it's the only place where you can really notice a difference between each of the 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, autumn.
Yes, so we definitely live in the temperate zone.
And in fact, the kinds of plants and animals that live here have to be able to switch between warm summer weather and freezing cold winters. The temperate climate is where you find all these trees that drop their leaves before the winter comes. That's the autumn or fall season. By winter, the trees go completely bare. They won't grow or put leaves out until it's springtime again, when the warmth has returned. And many of the animals in the temperate zone also have a special way of dealing with the switch from hot to cold. They go into hibernation or sleep through the winter, like bears, snakes, toads, and chipmunks. In summertime, you can find these same animals roaming around outside, but every winter, they're all underground, sleeping away to escape the cold. Okay, so that wraps up the temperate zone, the only climate zone with all 4 seasons.
So if you weren't sure where we lived, we could also look at this map. So let me use my pen here. So this continent is North America, and we live in North America. We live in New Jersey, which would be right about maybe here-ish, where the green is. So we're in the purple area. So we live in the temperate climate zone. We get cold winters, warm springs, and hot summers. Right? We get 4 different seasons.
That just leaves this last zone, the climate that includes places like California, Florida, Madagascar, Spain, northern India, and Australia. If you've ever been to any of these places, or if you live there, then you know that they don't ever get very cold in winter. So they're definitely not temperate. But their wintertime isn't hot either, so they're not really tropical. So it's like the warm climate zone, or scientists call it the mild climate. Think of it.
Right, so it's always warm there. That's like, if you can think about it, if you ever have friends or if you ever go to, let's say, Disney World in the fall or maybe in the winter. Like, I went to Disney in the winter one time, and it wasn't hot out, but it wasn't cold out. It was mild, right? It was a little warm.
It is somewhere in between temperate and tropical. Florida is a good example. It's one of the most popular winter vacation spots in the United States, since it has nice warm winters. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, just nice and warm. Like here you see someone golfing in their shorts in the Florida winter. But if you start comparing places in the mild zone, you'll notice something weird. We saw that this was Florida, but look at this scene from Arizona, which has the same warm winter climate as Florida. So what's going on? If these places are the same temperatures throughout the year, then why do they look so different?
So it's saying this place here is Florida in the red. And we have a different place here, and it says they have the same temperatures throughout the year, but yet they look so different. Why do you think? If you need more time, then you can pause the video. I'm going to continue on in 3, 2, 1, 0.
Why does Arizona look so different from Florida? The answer has to do with water. Even though these places have the same temperature, they don't get the same amount of rain. Scientists have a way of measuring how much rain each place on Earth gets. They leave out a container like this whenever it rains. It's called a rain gauge, and then they use a ruler to see how much rain fell. Florida gets about 50 inches of rain each year, which explains why Florida looks so much greener than Arizona, and also why Florida is known for its lakes and swamps. Florida is the place where alligators live. But a place like Arizona only gets 10 inches of rain a year. That's 40 inches less than Florida. That's almost nothing. With so little rain, Arizona is a desert. So climates aren't just about temperature, they're also about how much rain a place gets. That means that some of the places you colored on your climate map aren't actually those climates. There are a few places on Earth that are so dry, that get so little rain, that we give them their own fifth climate, the desert climate.
Desert.
You can see all the world's deserts here on this map.
Wow.
Now, we only call a place a desert if it gets 10 inches of rain or less per year. If you want to make your climate maps complete, you'll need to color the deserts. You can find step-by-step instructions for that in the extras if you'd like to do that. There are desert climates on almost every continent. You can notice also how they're always located directly north and south of the tropical zone. You see that?
Yeah, right? Look how they're very, pay attention to this. Let's use green here. Pay attention to this dotted line here. This one here, those are our tropic zones. And the deserts in the brown, they're all very close to those green lines.
I actually live not too far from a desert as an adult. I now live in San Francisco, California, in the USA. You can see that San Francisco is in the mild climate zone. We get about 24 inches of rain per year here. So we don't have swamps like Florida, but it's enough rain for plenty of big leafy plants to grow. It looks nice and green here in San Francisco. Things start looking weird to me, though, if I travel just directly east, like to eastern California. The amount of rainfall gets less and less. And as I approach the places that get less than 10 inches of rain per year, the landscape around me starts to look really different. I enter the desert. It's not as green. There aren't as many plants here as there are where I live, and the plants that I do find have all these gnarly thorns and spikes and spines, really crazy looking stuff. This one is a type of cactus called cholla, and you don't want to brush against it. It really hurts. Because the desert looks and feels so different than all the other places on Earth, that's why we say it's its own climate zone. It's not just the plants that are special in the desert. In order to survive, desert animals tend to have special kinds of traits too. Here's one example. You know how some animals pant in order to keep cool?
Yeah, like if you have a dog, you've definitely seen this before.
Well, animals don't want to pant in the desert because panting makes them thirsty. It's no good to always be really thirsty in a desert since there's not a lot of water there. So desert foxes don't pant to keep cool. Instead, they have really big ears that can give off heat. That way, they still keep cool, but not get as thirsty. Or check out the ears of this guy. It's a desert rabbit. It's called a jackrabbit. It's the same idea. The rabbit's big ears help it give off heat so that it stays cool and won't be as thirsty. So now you know about all 5 major climates on Earth. There's polar, temperate, mild, tropical, and desert. Which ones have you been to? And which ones would you want to visit?
All right, we're going to stop here for today. Tomorrow we'll continue with the lesson. I know it was long today. That's why I don't have you doing a long lesson for math. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to continue working with climate zones tomorrow.